Awesome. All right, Congressman, welcome. Tell us, first of all, the Supreme Court just ruled on these tariffs. Overall, what's your take? Is this a bad sign for what the president had planned?
Obviously, the president would have preferred to have them, and look, I'm broadly supportive of what he's been trying to do with tariffs, but I don't think it's going to be quite the huge thing that other people think. Look, this is not doesn't discredit his economic strategy at all. He just says, look, you don't have the power to do this by yourself. You're going to have to include Congress in this. We do control both chambers. I think there's broad support for the president. And, the interesting thing of the Democrats, because historically they were a party of tariffs. They talked about protecting jobs and not exporting jobs and trying to reestablish the industrial base, all things the president's trying to do, and yet anything he proposes they're against. And that's sad. That's no way to govern the country and no way to get things done in Washington. But look, I think this is kind of a hiccup along the way. I don't think right now the economy is in surprisingly good shape for what he inherited. Inflation's coming down. We had a good jobs report a couple weeks ago. All that looks pretty good. And, I think we'll soldier through this. We'll get through it. It's not going to be that big a deal.
It's a hiccup, not a complete roadblock.
Not at all. And again, this is just the Supreme Court doing its job from their point of view, which is to mediate these disputes and make sure that neither branch loses power and neither branch amasses it at the other's expense. But again, it's not a policy debate or decision. I think the president's broadly winning the debate on the economy, and I think he'll continue to do that. So, again, he's a strong president, but that's why we have a system of checks and balances.
Yeah. Tell us what we can expect coming to Oklahoma as we look at these appropriations bills. One of the best things about having you as our congressman is you hold a lot of those purse strings.
Well, it's going to be good for Oklahoma. First of all, we are a federal heavy state, and I'm a very federal heavy district. The two largest single site employers in Oklahoma are Tinker Air Force Base and Fort Sill Army Post, both of which are in my district. They do very, very well. There's a lot of concern out of Tinker about what's called the E-7 Wedge Tail. It's the follow-on aircraft for AWACS. We've got that fully funded in there. There had been some dispute in Washington about that. Always concerned about down at Fort Sill, what's called the Paladin artillery piece. That's very well funded. A lot of jobs tied up with that in Elgin, Oklahoma, where they do the last modernization for that. So tribal programs do exceptionally well. Impact aid, which is for all our school districts that get money. There's over 215 of them because of either military presence takes a lot of land off the tax roll or tribal presence takes a lot of land off tax roll. That did well. So OU did well. I know at the beginning of the year, last year, there was all this, oh my gosh, the weather center is going to be closed. It got a $100 million increase, so it's about 1.3, almost $4 billion budget. And I told people at the time, don't worry. These federal
facilities. It's hard to hear, though, and you told us, everyone just relax, it's going to be fine. It was still very scary for that community.
It is, and it's scary for the people that are in it, and I get that. But people, again, back to our constitutional system, look, the president, any president, puts out a budget. And the old joke is it's dead on arrival. And what you have to understand about a budget, it's the opening negotiating position for the administration. It's not, it will change as it works through the House and the Senate. And to get enacted into law, it's going to have support in both bodies, and honestly, it's going to have bipartisan support. We can't just pass things on straight party lines. You got to get to 60 in the United States Senate. We only have 53 Republicans. When they get to 60, I lose a lot of Republicans in the House because they'll have to move to the left to get Democrats, so I have to work with Democrats. So it's going to change, and it does that regardless of who the president is. The president, I'm very proud to say, supported all the bills, and we obviously have this flap over the Department of Homeland Security where I think Democrats in the Senate are being very irresponsible, but about 97% of the government's fully funded. Oklahoma did very, very well in that in terms of its federal priorities and policies that we think are important. So, again, I feel pretty good about the budget that was produced and that the president signed and supported.
The part of the government that is shut down, what do you think is going to happen?
It depends on when Democrats, I hate to put it this way, sober up. Look, they're mad, and the bill that the House did pass, the House has passed a bill. It's still live over in the Senate, and a majority of the United States Senate favors that bill. 52 Republicans voted for it. One Democrat, John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, voted for it. But the Senate has a rule: you got to get to 60. So the Democrats are actually in the minority in both chambers in terms of this legislation. We put some things in the bill, and again, Senate Democrats that agreed to it, extra money for body cams. We think that's a good idea. Look, most of the time, body cameras show the law enforcement officers usually in the right. And if they're not in the right, we need to know that too, and so we can correct that problem. We put in extra money for training, which Democrats wanted, but much more importantly, the agency they're mad at, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is already funded. It was funded in the big, beautiful bill. So what are you doing by shutting down Homeland Security? You're making sure that our TSA agents who make sure you don't get on a plane with a bomb aren't getting paid. That a much needed raise for air traffic controllers is in the Homeland Security bill. That's not happening. The Coast Guard, who's mad at the Coast Guard? 56,000 men and women that protect our shores, interdict drug trafficking, save Americans at sea. They're not getting paid. FEMA, what if we have a bunch of tornadoes? We're on the verge of tornado season here. They're not being funded. They won't be able to deploy as robustly as they should be. The Secret Service, people that actually protect the president and many other senior officials in the executive branch and track down counterfeiters and things, they're not getting funded. Nobody's mad at any of those people, but those are the people that are getting hurt by the Democratic Senate's decision not to move ahead. So, they shut the government down for 43 days, and this is now the third Democratic shutdown in less than 4 months. 3. What did they get? And the others, nothing. They didn't achieve their policy objectives with a 43-day shutdown. They won't proceed here. And look, the president's already been responsive. Again, we put things in the bill, but much more importantly, he put new people in charge in Minnesota. He lowered the presence in Minnesota. It's like, can't you take yes for an answer? The president's trying to work with you, and I think he's doing it in good faith. I just think we've got such irrational and hyper-partisan opposition to him amongst the Democratic base. The Democrats have to prove every day, I don't like Donald Trump. Well, that's no way to run the country. I didn't always agree, very seldom agreed with President Obama, but I never voted to shut down the government while he was president.
As like a purity test of
Yeah.
your
Yeah, now,
politics.
I will tell you, Republicans did, over Obamacare. I said that was a mistake then, and every opportunity I had to vote to reopen the government, I did. And I think they're making that kind of mistake now, but they're making it for longer. There's a pretty good indication that the shutdown hurt the economy in the fourth quarter. What a lot of economists are saying is they just released GDP numbers today, and they weren't quite as high as we thought they would be. And most people are attributing that to the shutdown. So again, when your opposition is such that you literally are hurting the country, you need to rethink your tools and tactics. And this is a big mistake. But in the end, again, we're willing to work with you. We showed that in the bills, and we'll continue, but we're not going to eviscerate ICE, and we're not going to vilify men and women that are trying to enforce the law and keep us safe. When I hear some of my Democratic colleagues compare ICE agents to Nazis and the Gestapo, I mean, these are not Nazis and the Gestapo. These are law enforcement agents, quite often being harassed, and you're worried about these things, then don't do sanctuary cities. We have ICE operations in Oklahoma. You don't see anything like this. Only a few places in the country you do, because our public officials cooperate with federal law enforcement. And if you want to change the law, fine. That's what the Constitution's all about, what Congress is all about. That's what elections are for. That's the way to do it. But uniformly shutting down the government, it reminds me of when, and I'd say it because I'm this old, but in the 50s and 60s, watching southern states try and resist civil rights. Federal law is supreme, and local law enforcement should be working with. We settled this in the Civil War. So you don't like it, change presidents. We do that all the time here. This president lost an election. You had your guy for 4 years. We've seen power switch back and forth between Republicans and Democrats in Congress. The margins are close. So there's plenty of tools for appropriate opposition.
There's some fear,
Shutting
though,
down the
that,
government's
that,
not
that,
one.
that tool of being able to vote someone else in power now is in question with this SAVE Act. Talk about that, because people are saying it's not just voter ID. The states would have to turn over their voter rolls, which is...
Well, first of all, it's public record. It's not hard to get a voter roll. I mean, I created the first one in this state actually for the Republican Party before we even had a, you can go down to the courthouse and get them. So the idea that this is somehow secret information, it's not. It's available to anybody. And second, though, there's nothing, most people, every poll that you can look at think you ought to show an ID to vote. And now some states issue driver's license to non-citizens or to even to people that are here illegally. So saying to vote, you've got to show some proof of citizenship makes sense. In Oklahoma, again, it's overwhelmingly popular. Lots of states do it now. So I don't see this as something interfering. And again,
And that's
I
not
got
the
to
goal
show
of
it.
it, because people are saying that's the goal of this legislation. Is
No,
to
it's not.
make
It's to
harder.
make sure that you can be, first of all, it's not very hard to vote in the United States of America. Second, to make sure that the people that do vote are legally eligible to vote. I have to show, look at my age. If I go into a bar in Oklahoma, I got to show an ID. As if like, you really think I'm under 21? This is incredibly flattering. You know, if I'm getting on the airplane, I got to show an ID. If I'm cashing a check, I got to show an ID. This is not onerous. It's common sense, and it restores confidence in the election system.
But we don't even have a record of a lot of voter fraud. Even Republican groups, Heritage Foundation, have come back and said we really only have a handful of cases we can find over the past few decades.
That's right. I think that is true. I don't think there's massive fraud in voter elections, but I also think there's the potential for it. We do have states that are now in municipalities that have allowed people that aren't American citizens to vote in their municipal election. I think that's outrageous. I think you ought to be a citizen of this country to vote. And I don't think it's asking too much to demonstrate with appropriate ID who you are. I'm asked that all the time. All of us are. You know, it's not like they would take a check without an ID. I can't put money in my bank without showing my driver's license.
There's also a lot of fear among some women I'm hearing. My birth certificate does not match the name on my passport because I've been married. So that could be a hurdle for a lot of women. Is that a
I don't
genuine
think so. I
concern?
think this is an imaginary
Okay.
thing. That, again, these are people that have just decided they don't like anything Trump is for. Look, this is pretty simple stuff, and I just think it heightens confidence in the system. I don't think it discourages anybody from voting. And I think it's an appropriate safeguard. If you have to do it to get on a plane, to buy a drink, or cash a check, why is this somehow going to keep you from voting?
Yeah. Okay, back to, you mentioned the shutdown affecting possibly FEMA. We've got wildfires raging right now. Any concern that we're not going to be able to get the help and response from the federal government?
I do have some concern. Now, I think we have enough reserves there to take care of things for a few weeks. But if you have a major disaster, and we have hurricane season, tornado season coming up, I do worry about that. And we have ongoing obligations. We're still paying to help people that dealt with Hurricane Helene last year in the Carolinas, or out on the West Coast where we had those awful fires. Those people ought to be getting uninterrupted support. And again, who's mad at FEMA? Nobody. I mean, you might want to restructure to make it more efficient, but the point is, this is an inappropriate tool. And so, again, I think they're playing with fire. And if we had a disaster, and they can happen, that's the point. It's a disaster. You don't know it's coming. It's not predictable. You better be prepared to deploy people instantly, so Americans in trouble can get the help they need.
You
And
said
we're
that
not right now.
timeline is pretty tight. Like maybe in the next few weeks we'd be okay, but then it's dire.
It is. I mean, we had $26 billion to refill the disaster relief account at FEMA, because that money's going in and out all the time as you have disasters. And again, you're asking people to work that aren't getting paid. You know, why should a TSA agent, who I guarantee you has a mortgage, has a car payment, has a family to take care of, have to worry when he's doing his job? They have to work. They don't get to not work. You know, in the Coast Guard, why would somebody doing a tough job, you know, at sea, you know, it's my my spouse going to get the check? Is everything going to be okay at home? If I don't pay my credit card, do I then get the interest payment because I didn't pay? You know, that's just wrong. And it also starts disrupting contractors we have. Again, fortunately, the defense is taken care of, but, you know, if we were shutting down Tinker, you know, right outside the gates, there's 3,700 Boeing jobs that depend on what goes on in Tinker. There's 1,500 Pratt & Whitney jobs just south of there in the engineering center that depend on doing work on Tinker. So it ripples through the economy. It's not even just the federal employees. And there's no assurance those people, if they had to be laid off, would get paid. We will take care of the federal workers, but even it's just they just went through this for 43 days.
Right.
Why now?
We were just here.
Yeah.
Looking forward to anything specific. Do you need to hear anything from the president in his next State of the Union?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think any president. This is a great privilege and opportunity, and I hope this president doesn't have to go through what he did last year, where we had literally members of Congress disrupting him and being rude. I don't recall that happening to quite that degree before, but
I remember the whole "you lied." I think that was the first time that I heard such a disruption.
it was. And
That sticks in my memory because I thought, oh, we've crossed a level of uncivility here.
Yeah, but at least he apologized immediately that night. I know the member who did it, and you know he wasn't like railing a cane at the president, you know, from the floor of the House. But regardless, again, either party, never appropriate to do. Look, I hope he focuses first and foremost on the economy. I think that's what Americans are the most interested in. Obviously, he's going to need to address the situation with Iran. We've concentrated a considerable force there. What are we going to do? What are the objectives there? I think he'll also talk about what he would see as some of the successes. And I think a lower inflation rate. I mean, I have to tell you, it's hysterical to me to get criticized by the Democrats on affordability when, like, where were you when inflation was over 9% and Joe Biden was president? I mean, it's been coming down, and this president's brought it down further. You know, it's just, yeah, again, the inability to see where maybe why do you think Trump won? It's because of a lot of the mistakes that were made during the Biden years by Democratic Congress and by President Biden. So he's at a year in. I would argue things are coming. I think he'll make the case as to why he thinks his policies are working. He'll make the case as to why people ought to be confident in the future of the country. And he'll make the case for what's been a very robust and I would say so far successful foreign policy.
You worried about any sort of mental issues there? We just saw him giving a speech where he told the same story 10 minutes after he told it. So any
Look, I see the president
issues?
a lot. Anybody that thinks he's got a problem, you know, isn't paying attention. This is not a guy hiding from the press. I mean, he's doing interviews every day. If you want to know what he's like, just turn on the television. And people always ask me, is he different in private? I say, no, he's exactly the same. So, I'm not worried about his energy level. You know, he's an incredibly energetic guy. He's got lots of energy. He's negotiating all over the world. I mean, you see him, he's engaged with the press, whether you like him or not. It's not like he's hiding or anybody's hiding him. And I don't think anybody wonders who is really running the country. They know who's running the country. His name is Donald Trump.
If you did see those signs of decline, do you think your party would be willing to say, whoa, something's going on here?
I would hope we would, but you know, it's not worth speculating about in my view because you don't see them. Whereas with, you know, Biden, it was pretty obvious. I mean, you could just show an interview from his first year and his fourth year and ask if there had been any decline. And remember, that guy had won the nomination for his party. It wasn't until he had a debate with Donald Trump and collapsed, basically, that the Democrats forced him out. I mean, the guy won 87% of the votes in the Democratic primary. And
Sure,
Donald Trump,
it's a tricky issue. I mean, with aging, and I'm sure that's really tough to address with people. And I think those of us that have elderly parents and grandparents, we know those conversations can be hard. And on that level, I can't imagine.
no, but again, I just don't. We don't have to have that. Again, he's active enough to agitate the Democrats beyond belief. You know,
So you're not worried.
I'm not worried. You know, they might not like what he's doing. I mean, they would probably like it if he weren't as active and robust as he is. But I don't see any loss of capacity there at all.
That's good to hear. Did you hear the governor's comments that are kind of going viral yesterday about Congress kind of just driving us off a cliff?
Well, Congress got the big, beautiful bill done, which I think is the most significant piece of legislation: lowered taxes, energy deregulation, border security, more money for defense, extra money for air traffic control, which is a big deal for Mike Mulroney out here. Congress just got all the appropriations budget but one done, and we're in a fight over that. But actually, I would argue the Trump Congress has been pretty effective Congress. So, with all due respect, everybody's allowed to have their opinion, but I'm not too worried about how my colleagues are performing. Would I like to do better? Sure. I wish I had the kind of majority. I wish the president had the kind of majorities in the United States Senate and as Governor Stitt is fortunate enough to have.
Are we going off a cliff? He says we're headed straight for it.
No, I don't think we're going off a cliff. I think, again, the country has turned around economically. I think it's the envy of the world in terms of not only how well it's doing economically, but the extraordinary role it's playing on the international stage. So, look, I'll worry about America when our immigration problem is people want to leave. It must be a pretty good place because about a bunch of the world wants to move here, be here, live here. So it doesn't sound to me like we're, in any sort of danger. This is just normal America. Look, we're the most important country in the world. We're the center of the global economy, and we're always going to be in the middle of things. So are things always going to be interesting here? Yeah, this is, again, there's lots of great countries in the world, but this is not a country that's a backwater or not significant in what's happening. So I always expect controversy in American politics. That's been true for 250 years.
Nothing new.
Nothing new.
Anything else I didn't ask you? We touched on so many topics. I'm so excited. But
No.
if I missed anything, please holler at me. I just kind of let the conversation
No,
go.
you
I love it. You
pretty
always
much
take it
covered the
somewhere
waterfront, so I don't see
I'm
anything
trying
that
to
we
pay. It's
missed.
just so much going on.
But
It's so
yeah, and the one thing I would just leave you, we are so fortunate to live in this country, and we got a big political year coming up. It's big nationally, but it's really big in Oklahoma. We're going to have a new governor. We got a lot of candidates out there, really high quality candidates. We're going to change most of our state elected officials because they term out. Legislature, every seat and half the Senate seats are up. So I would just urge people, get involved. This is an exciting time. I don't care what your point of view is. Oklahoma's going to have different leadership next year at the state level for sure. You have an opportunity to make choices. So get to know a lot of these people that are knocking on your door. I wouldn't worry too much about the president. He's not on a ballot. I would worry about the people that are and what kind of folks they are and what they do. But again, we got a great federal delegation. I think all of them will be fine. And we have an opportunity to choose new leadership at the state level simply because some really good people are terming out. Nothing against them, just their time to go.